Hey everyone, welcome to the first episode of Carl's Christian Podcast. We hope that you enjoyed today's video or today's podcast. And yeah, please make sure to like and subscribe if you're new to the channel. And let's get right into it. Also, please ignore the background noise during the podcast because when it was recorded, there was a lot of background noise. But hope you enjoy. Let's get right into it. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the first episode of Carl's Christian Podcast, and today we are here with Everett, and we'll be discussing the first topic of today's podcast: should the government decide what the church does? And yeah, do you think the government should decide what the church does, Everett?
Uh, no, I do not think that the government should decide what the church does. Hello, everyone. I'm Everett. Thanks for having me on today, Carl. Yeah,
Yeah,
so
introduce
Everett,
yourself.
I have a YouTube channel, Constitutional Conversations. Haven't uploaded anything in a while, but still, you can go check it out and subscribe. I got some good videos on there. Um, I would not say I'm a constitutional expert, but I have read it multiple times and made a bunch of videos on it, and I know it fairly decently. So uh, this is an area that I really enjoy learning about and talking about with other people.
So do you think that the government should interfere in what the church does?
I do not. So I kind of thought about this question a little bit. So if I go too long, you can definitely stop me. But basically, the government should not decide what the church does because if you look at the hierarchy of authority, the church should be above the government. So, what I mean by that is that we have in the First Amendment the freedom to speech and also to the exercise of religion. So the First Amendment says Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. So basically, what that means is that everyone in America, in this country, has the right to practice whatever religion they would like to in whatever way they would like to, as long as they're not doing something illegal, right? So obviously, if there's a church of murder, right, at this church we murder everyone who walks in the door. That is obviously not a valid religion. That is, murder. That's illegal. That's bad. But whatever religion you choose, whether you're an atheist or a Muslim or a Christian or whatever, you get to practice that religion in whatever way you need to do that. Um, and so a lot of people will say, well, the government can, decide what the church does because the government has more power than the church, right? So take COVID, for instance. Well, we can shut down the churches because it's a national health risk, right?
And
Or
yeah,
maybe,
for sorry to interrupt. For those of you who don't know, it's the Christian church, not yeah, we're talking about the Christian church right now.
yes, we are
So
talking about the Christian church. Thank you for clarifying that for me. Um, right. So during COVID, the government can say, "Oh, well, we can shut down the churches because it's a national health risk," right? Or maybe if there's people who are really, against hate speech, oh, we can, regulate what they say because we can't let these, places, these churches promote hate speech. Well, in any case like that where the government is interfering, I believe that the government does not have the power to do that because aside from the fact that we have our First Amendment, so I did actually just think of a better way to phrase this. So, um, if you caught what I said about the First Amendment, um, the First Amendment clearly says that we have the right to exercise our religion. Um, we have the right to religion or to be religious or to go to church, any way you want to say it. We have that right in the First Amendment. So now the conversation, and I don't think there's really any question about that. So the conversation then shifts to who gives us that right, right? Because if the government says you have the right to religion, the government can then take that away. But that's not how our system was intended to work. Our system was intended that God gives us the rights in the Constitution, therefore, the government cannot take those away. So, anyone who wants to restrict what the churches are doing are being anti constitutional because that's not how our system was supposed to work. If you go to the second paragraph of the Declaration of Independence, it says, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, endowed by their creator with certain unalienable rights. So what the Declaration of Independence is saying is that the rights that we get in the Constitution are directly from God. So my right to be in a church and my right to do what I want within my religion in that church comes directly from God. So the government cannot take that away. The government cannot say, oh, COVID, national health, sorry, we got to shut your church down. Well, no, you don't get to make that decision. Only God gets to make that decision, right? The government cannot say, well, you're promoting hate speech. That's bad. It's really hurting a lot of people. So sorry, but you're not allowed to do that in your church. Well, the government does not get to make that decision. Only God can make that decision. Um, so again, this is my amateur view of the Constitution. Not a scholar or a lawyer or anything. There's lots of people who would disagree with me. There are lots of people who would agree with me, and I do believe my view is correct. But there are also lots of people who would disagree with me. But in my opinion, if you read the Declaration of Independence and you read, or paragraph 2 specifically, and then you read the First Amendment, it clearly states that God gives us the right to go to church, to be in church, to have a church. And the First Amendment says that we get to do what we want, what we need to do in that church, specifically for Christians, what we need to do to serve God, right? If the church is shut down because of COVID, now we're not able to serve God. We're not able to worship Him. We're not able to pray. We're not able to convert other people. I mean, we are, but like it's, you know, very different and more difficult and just not how we're used to doing that online or individually, rather than having these churches that we've had for thousands and thousands of years, where we've come together and assembled to worship God through plagues and through wars and through countless different countries, and countless different countries dominated by other religions. We have always had the church where we could go and worship God and serve Him. And at least last year, for a little bit, we didn't have that because the government took it away. And I don't think that the government should have been able to do that. I don't think that they were within their authority to do that. So that's just bringing it like to a real life example of something that happened last year, to kind of view this question through.
So like Romans 13 chapter 13 verse 1 and 2, it says, obey the government, for God is the one who has put it there. There is no government anywhere that God has not placed in power.
Right.
So those who refuse to obey the law of the land, are refusing to obey God, and the punishment will follow. Where do you think that like the law of the government and the obeying God, like, do you think, what do you think about that verse?
So I do agree with that verse, and that is a verse that a lot of people will bring up. And it is true, right? You should serve the government. But the caveat to that verse is that we serve the government when it is acting on its authority, its legitimate authority, right? So what I'm trying to say here is like God is the one who gives our government authority, right? And if they overstep their authority, then it is our duty as Christians, I believe, to reject what they say. So I believe that we follow God first, we follow the government second. If the government says to do something which is clearly against God, we do not do that, right? That's why we had the revolution in the first place, um, because the founding fathers believed that the British government, which they were supposed to follow and which they had followed for hundreds of years, they said, this government has overstepped its power. It is now directly against God. Therefore, we cannot follow it anymore. We have to have a revolution, right? So if you read further down in the second paragraph of the Declaration of Independence, um, it says, to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their powers from the consent of the governed, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it, and to institute a new government, laying its foundations on such principles and organizing its powers in such form. So what he's saying in that part of it is, when the government becomes or starts to not follow God or to disobey God, then we change what they're doing or we make a new one, right? So in our day and age, we would say we vote in new people, we, impeach bad people, we, use all of our legitimate systems to change the government so that they start.
Like, so what's an impeachment for?
Okay, so an impeachment is basically a process where a government official is removed by um, either the people or other government officials. In state politics, I think some people can be removed by like a vote, like just everyone goes and votes to remove someone. But in national politics, it is the Senate or House can remove their own members, or they can vote to remove the president or Supreme Court justices if they find that those people are acting in an unconstitutional fashion. Um, so basically, any official who violates the Constitution, other officials can vote to remove them from office. And obviously, that's a last resort, reserved for extremely bad cases. We've only had, I think, 3 presidents who have ever been impeached. So out of 45,
Okay.
we've only had 3 who have had to go through that process, and none of them have been removed. Um, and so it's a very complicated, complex, interesting issue. But I was only saying that just to say that we have these processes where we can remove people who are against God, right? So we do have the the power in our American government system. We have the power to remove people, whether by impeachment or whether by voting or whether by other things. We have the power to remove people who are against God. And if we remove them and the government still continues to be bad, or if we're not able to remove them, what the Declaration of Independence says is that we don't listen to that government. Whether that means we overthrow it or whether that means we just live our lives and obey God instead of them, whatever it is, whatever, if it's very extreme or not extreme at all, we do not listen to a government who is against God. Um, and so that's an example is like the Roman Christians, right? Roman citizens, they didn't follow the Roman laws, they didn't worship the Roman gods, and a lot of them were martyrs. A lot of them were executed, they were put in gladiator fights, fed to lions, all kinds of stuff. And they accepted it because they said,
I agree.
we're not going to follow your government anymore. God says to follow you when you're doing the right thing, you're doing the wrong thing, so we're not going to follow you, and if you kill us, we're fine with that. And a lot of them got killed, but that was the right thing to do, right? Because they wanted to follow God before they wanted to follow an evil government who's directly opposed to God. A lot of Christians will disagree with me on that because of what you brought up, Romans 13. A lot of Christians will disagree. Some, even during the revolution, there were some people, not the founding fathers, but there were other people who would have been on the same level with the founding fathers who said, we are not going to take part in this American Revolution because of Romans 13. We're not going to have anything to do with this revolution. And that was their opinion. And, we still had a revolution, and the founding fathers still won in the end, and we still have America today. Um, but that is definitely a very contentious issue even today among Christian circles in politics.
Yeah, so do you think like the government should be able to shut down the church or to like I think you said they shouldn't be able to, right?
Right. Yeah, that was my earlier point. Is that during COVID, a lot of churches were considered um, super spreader centers or whatever. They were considered places where COVID could spread very easily, and so the government said you cannot have church, or if you have it, you can only have this many people. They have to wear masks. You can only do outside, this and that and this and that. And I don't think any of that was constitutional. I don't think we should have followed any of that. Honestly, I think it's a failure of the church not to stand up to those people. But there were some churches who did. There was one in California. I don't remember who it was, but there was one big one in California where the police kept showing up because they kept having church. And they're like, no, we don't care. We're following God. We're going to meet here every Sunday and we're going to have church. And the police showed up every Sunday and shut them down because they just showed up and they were like, we're here, we're doing church, and we don't really care what you say because this is what God wants us to do, and that's what we're going to do. And I think we should have had more places that did that. I respect the opinions of everyone. Obviously, it's a private a church is a private thing, so they can decide for themselves what they want to do. But in my opinion, they should not have bent the knee to an oppressive government who's forcing them to shut down. But again, I don't I don't run a church, so I don't know, what all they had to go through. Like, I'm saying this from the sideline. I don't know how hard it is, but I still think that they should have tried.
Yeah,
But again,
imagine if
I don't run a church, so I don't know.
imagine if every church decided to like say they would not shut down. That would have changed a lot of things.
Oh yeah. And especially in a time where people really needed it, like COVID, quarantine, people dying, people not being able to see each other, being depressed, and all that. I mean, imagine if people would have been able to go out every Sunday and go to church. I mean, how many people would that have helped? Even if you're not a Christian, just from a you know uh, anti-depression standpoint, how many people would that have helped? I mean, like, seriously, it would have had really good consequences, and we weren't able to see that because a lot of the churches decided to shut down.
Yep. Well, that I think that answers the questions.
All right, I just want to say, or Carl is not responsible for any of the opinions I said today. YouTube, please don't demonetize them. I don't think I said anything worthy of being demonetized.
I completely agree, though. I agree with everything he said. It's all.
My opinions are my own. Cancel me first.
But yeah, y'all. Let us know what you think of the podcast. Also, if you want us to talk about specific topics, comment them down below, and we will try to get to them eventually. And yeah,
Yes.
see you all next week.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. Thank you everyone for watching.
Thank you for being here.
Yeah.
We hope that you have enjoyed today's episode of Carl's Christian Podcast. We will be uploading every single week on Saturdays and Sundays at 3:45 p.m. and 11 a.m. EST. Please stay tuned, hit the notification bell, and see you all on the next episode. Have a blessed week.